is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Staying with the African Development Bank, it has called for temporary deferment of the debt African nations owe to multilateral development banks and international financial institutions. The AfDB says this can be done by reprofiling loans to create fiscal space for nations to deal with the COVID-19 crisis. And Shaoxi reports.
According to a March 2020 bank report, these figures could reach $2.1 trillion in 2020. Tunisian authorities have welcomed the African Development Bank's initiative.
We're facing a global health crisis, which has a negative impact on all the world economies, especially the most vulnerable countries. International donors, banks, and financial institutions must take responsibility. The African Development Bank is right. The world must adapt to this unique situation with unprecedented economic and social consequences.
Experts say the COVID-19 could cost Africa a GDP loss between $22.1 billion in the base case scenario and $88.3 billion in the worst case scenario.
The Africa Development Bank warned that Africa might fall into recession this year if the current situation persists. Tunisia would not be spared from this catastrophic scenario.
African analysts estimate that the continent's total public debt could increase under the base case scenario from $1.86 trillion at the end of 2019 to over $2 trillion in 2020, compared to $1.9 trillion projected in a no-pandemic scenario.
We were already suffering and tired before the coronavirus crisis. More state debt will only complicate the situation. I hope the world listens to our urgent request.
The African Development Bank president said he supported the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres' urgent call for special resources for the world's developing countries and for the suspension of debts of low-income countries in these fast-moving and uncertain times. The Tunisian Observatory of Economy has called on international banks and financial institutions to cancel the debt service of developing countries in 2020 without accumulation of interest and without penalties in order to reduce the economic impact of the COVID-19 crisis. Adnan Shawishi, CGTN, Tunis.